Good morning, everyone. Today we'll be talking about credit derivatives as a whole, in which we'll be discussing about credit ratings, default intensities. We'll be estimating default probabilities on the bond prices. We'll be discussing about credit default swaps. So there's a lot to catch up on. So let's get right into it. Before jumping on to individual topics, let's just first understand what credit derivatives are. So credit derivatives क्या होते हैं? They are negotiable bilateral contracts, which are reciprocal arrangement between two parties to perform an act in exchange of the other party's acts. So basically, this helps the user to manage their exposure to the credit risk. The buyer pays a fees and the party takes on to the risk. And if we discuss what exact definition is to be, so credit derivative refers to any one of the various instruments and techniques designed to separate and then to transfer the credit risk of the risk of an event, of a default or a corporate or a sovereign buyer, transferring it to an entity other than the lender or debt holder. Simply explained, it is a transfer to credit risk from one party to another, transferring the underlying. अब इसके बाद अगर हम डिस्कस करते हैं कि कितने टाइप्स होते हैं क्रेडिट डेरिवेटिव्स के लिए, सो ब्रॉडली देयर आर टू टाइप्स. फर्स्टली वुड बी अनफंडेड क्रेडिट डेरिवेटिव्स एंड द सेकंड वुड बी फंडेड क्रेडिट डेरिवेटिव्स. सो अगर हम पहले अनफंडेड वालों की बात करें, so it is a contract between two parties where each is responsible for making the payments under the contract. So these are termed as unfunded as the seller makes no upfront payment to any future liabilities. The seller makes any payment only when the settlement is met. Ultimately, the buyer takes the credit risk whether the seller will be able to pay any cash or will there be any physical settlement amount. So credit default swaps is one of the most common and popular type of unfunded credit derivatives. Now jumping upon the funded wala aspect. So the funded credit derivatives, in this type the party that is assuming the credit risk makes an initial payment that is used to settle any credit events that can be happen going forward. Thereby the buyer is not exposed to the credit risk of the seller. Credit linked loan, which is also known as CLN, or collateralized debt obligations, if I'm pronouncing it right, also known as CDOs, are the charmers of the funded credit derivatives products. These kind of transactions generally involves SPVs. अब SPVs क्या होते हैं हम ये वीडियो के आगे डिस्कस करेंगे. So these are used for raising a debt obligation, which is done through the seller. The process are collateralized by investing in highly raised securities, and these notes proceeds can be used for any physical or cash settlements. अगर अब हम डिस्कस करें प्रोडक्ट्स अंदर ईच टाइप कि अनफंडेड क्रेडिट डेरिवेटिव्स में क्या क्या आता है और फंडेड क्रेडिट डेरिवेटिव्स में क्या क्या आता है. सो जब हम अनफंडेड देखते हैं तो सबसे पहला क्रेडिट डिफॉल्ट स्वैप्स, which are also called CDS, credit default swap options. This is another one, or their credit spread options are another one. Total return swaps are another one. CDS index products, which is basically a variety of credit default swaps. This is also one of the unfunded credit derivatives. And lastly being CDS on asset-backed securities. So ये सारा मिला के हमारा unfunded credit derivatives बनता है. And जब हम funded credit derivatives की बात करते हैं, so firstly there is credit linked note, which is also called as CLN, constant proportion debt obligation, which is also called CPDO, and the last one being collateralized debt obligations, also known as CDO, which we as mentioned in the funded credit derivatives part. इसके बाद हम डिस्कस करते हैं कि what are the benefits of credit derivatives and the risk of the credit derivatives. So अगर हम शुरू करें benefits of credit derivatives से, so firstly it enables the lenders or the investors to take the credit risk as per their capacity. Nextly being they help in enhancing the market efficiency and liquidity, and the third one being they act as financial shocks and absorbers. Absorbers of the economy, and then lastly being they create macroeconomic and financial stabilities. So these are all basically broadly the benefits of credit derivatives. And nextly jumping on what are the risks involved in terms of credit derivatives. The firstly being it could lead to increased leverage and risk taking by investors. So basically the risk increases when it comes to credit derivatives. Nextly being markets needs to be liquid to manage the risk through CDS, which are credit default swaps. Nextly, it may not always channel risk to those who best understand and handle it. And the lastly being new instruments keep appearing constantly that are not always tested. So these are broadly the risk which is involved in terms of credit derivatives. We'll be proceeding on कि हमारा first main topic है. So our first topic was credit ratings, or how we can say that how do we value the credit derivatives. So the value of a credit derivative is dependent on both the credit quality of the borrower and the credit quality of the third party, refers to as the counterparty. So in placing a value on the credit derivative, the credit quality of the counterpart is more important than that of the borrower. in the event the counterparty goes into default or in some way cannot honor the derivative contract, pay off the underlying loan, the lender is at a loss, they would not receive the lender of their principals because they would lose the fees paid to the third party. So on the other hand, if the counterparty has a better credit rating than the borrower, it increases the quality of the debt overall. Credit derivatives are traded over the counter, which is also known as OTC. In 2010, the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, if I'm spelling this right. So this split regulation of the OTC swap market between the Securities and Exchange Commission, which is also known as the SEC, and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, which is the CTSC. So prior to this, a lack of regulation and oversight led to the speculative trading of the product. Furthermore, the chain ownership of the instrument was very convoluted. So, and the detail of terms are murky. Misuse of credit derivatives played a key role in the 2007 and 2008 financial crisis, in which Lehman Brothers faced the highest impact. So, if we talk about the credit derivatives benchmark indices, so while credit derivatives usually trade over the counter, which is also known as I mentioned, the OTCs, these are now various credit derivatives indexes that traders can use as a benchmark to value the performances of their holdings. So most of these indexes track and measure total returns for the various segments of the bond issues, market focusing on the credit default swaps as their major credit derivative part. So credit default swaps is one of the most popular and the most common credit derivatives used in the markets. So for instance, the credit default swap index, CDX, former the Dow Jones CDX, is a benchmark financial instrument made up of CDS that can be issued by the North American or emerging market companies. So the CDX was the first CDX index which was created in the early 2000s and was based on a basket of single issue CDs. So the CDX is itself a tradable security, a credit market derivative. But the CDX index also functions as a shell. So what a shell is like basically a container, as it is made up of a collection of other derivatives known as credit default swaps और CD. इसके बाद अगर हम डिस्कस करें कि जो हमारे वैल्यूएशन क्राइटेरिया है, जो हमारे क्रेडिट रेटिंग्स है, इसके अंदर क्या रिस्क होता है. So firstly, the risk involving credit derivatives are a concern among the regulations of the financial markets. The US Federal Reserve issued several statements in the fall of 2005 about these risks and highlighted the growing backlog of confirmation for credit derivative trades. So these backlogs pose risk to the market both in theory and at likelihood. So and they are executable and other risk in the financial statement. One challenge in regulating these and other derivatives is that the people who are most known about them also typically have a vested incentive in encouraging their growth, and lack of regulations. Incentive may be indirected, like we could call them in academics, have not consulting incentives, but also incentives in keeping open towards the research aspects. So these are all basically the risks involved when we value a credit derivative and when we discuss about the credit rating. Yeah, just to add on to the credit rating point. So the term credit rating refers to any unquantified assessment of a borrower's credit worthiness in general terms or with respect to a particular debt or financial obligation. So a credit rating can be assigned to any entity that seeks to borrow money, be it an individual, a corporation, a state or a provincial authority, or even a sovereign government. Individual credit is scored by business bureaus such as Experian, Equifax and TransUnion on a 3-digit number scale using a form of Fair Isaac Corporation, which is also known as FICO credit scoring. Credit assessment and evaluation for companies and governments is generally performed by a credit agency such as S&P Global, Moody's or Fitch Ratings. These rating agencies are paid by the entity seeking a credit rating of itself or one of its debt issues. So what are the key takeaways? So a credit rating is a quantified assessment of the credit worthiness of a borrower in general terms or with respect to a financial obligation. The next being credit ratings determine whether a borrower is approved for credit as well as the interest rate at which it will be repaid. So a credit rating or score is assigned to any entity that wants to borrow money. So as I mentioned, it can be an individual, corporation, state or provincial authority or even a sovereign government. So credit for individual customers is rated on a numerical scale based on the FICO calculation by credit bureaucrats. So bonds issued by business and governments are rated by credit agencies on a letter-based system. So now we'll try to understand in deeper sense what credit ratings are establishing. So a loan is a debt, essential a promise, often contractual. So the contractual being a credit rating determines the likelihood of that borrower which will be willing to be able to pay a loan with the conveyance of agreement without defaulting. So an individual's credit rating affects their chances of approval for a given loan. and favorable terms of a loan. A high credit rating indicates a strong possibility of paying back the loan in its entirety without any issues, while a poor credit rating suggests that the borrower has had trouble paying back the loans and also the interest in the past and might follow the same pattern in the future. So credit ratings and credit scores. Now we'll be discussing what exactly they do. So credit ratings apply to businesses and governments as well as individuals. So for example, sovereign credit rating points apply to national governments, while corporate credit ratings apply to solely to the corporations. Credit scores, on the other hand, apply only to individuals. So credit scores are derived from the credit history maintained by credit rating agencies like Equifax and all. So a short-term credit rating reflects the likelihood that a borrower will default within a year. So an individual with credit score reported as a number generally ranging from 300 to 850. So credit rating agencies typically assign letter grades to indicate rating. S&P Global's, Moody's, for instance, has a credit rating scale ranging from AAA, which is excellent, to C and D. So a debt instrument within a rating below BB is considered to be speculative or junk bond, which means it is more likely to default on loan. Yeah, so now if we discuss the factors affecting credit rating and credit scores. So credit agencies take into consideration several factors when assigning a credit rating to an organization. Firstly, an agency considers the entity's past history of borrowing and paying off debts. So any missed payments of defaults on loans negatively impact the rating. The agency also looks at the entity's futures and the economic potential. If the economic future looks bright, the credit rating tends to be higher. But if the borrower does not have a positive economic outlook, the credit rating will fall. So for individual, a high numerical credit score for the credit reporting agencies indicates a strong credit profile and will generally result in lower interest rates and which are basically charged by the lenders. A number of factors are taken into consideration for an individual's credit score, some of which have greater weight than others. Details of which the credit factor can be found in a credit report, which typically accompanies a credit score. So these 5 factors are included and a weightage to calculate the person's FICO credit score. So firstly being payment history, which accounts for around 35%. The next being the amounts owed, which are basically around 30%. The next being the length of the credit history, which is around 15%. The next being the next being the new credit, which is around 10%, and the fifth being what is exactly the type of the credit. So as noted above, FICO scores range from a low of 300 to a high of 850. A perfect credit score that has been achieved by only about 1% of the borrowing public. A very good credit score is generally over that is 740 or higher. This score will qualify a person for the best interest rates on a mortgage and on more favorable terms or on the lines of credit. With a credit score that falls between 580 to 740, financing for certain loans can often be secured with higher interest rates as the credit rating score fails. So it is important to note that FICO scores does not take into consideration, but they do have a weight, the length of one's credit histories. Even though the younger people may have been at a disadvantage, it is possible with short histories to get favorable scores depending on the rest of the credit report. So newer accounts, for example, will lower the average account age, which could lower the credit scores. So now if we actually understand what is the essence of credit scores and basically the importance. So the credit ratings for borrowers are based on a substantial due diligence, so which is conducted by the rating agencies, of course. So though a borrowing entity will strive to have the highest possible credit rating because it is a major impact of interest rates charged by the lenders, the rating agencies must take a balanced and objective view of the borrower's financial situations and the capacity to serve and repay the debt. So a credit rating determines not only whether or not a borrower will be approved for a loan, but also the interest rate at which the loan needs to be repaid. So as companies depends on loan for many startups and other expenses, being denied a loan could spell disaster. So and a high interest rate loan is much more difficult to pay back. A borrower's credit rating should play a major role in determining which lender to apply for a loan. The right lender for someone with great credit likely will be different than someone with good or with poor credit. So credit ratings also play a large role in potential investors' decision as to whether to purchase the bonds or to reject the bond. So a poor credit rating is a risky investment. That's because it indicates a larger probability that a company will be unable to pay its bond payments. So this is basically all about the credit ratings, and now we'll be moving on to the next topic. हाँ, सो अब हम डिस्कस करेंगे कि व्हाट इज एग्जैक्टली रिकवरी रेट्स। अब हम रिकवरी रेट्स के बारे में बात करेंगे, हम अंडरस्टैंड करेंगे कि ये कितना क्रूशियल है जब हम क्रेडिट रेटिंग्स एलोकेट करते हैं, जब हम प्रोबेबिलिटीज डिफाइन करते हैं, जब बॉन्ड प्राइस एस्टिमेट करते हैं, और कैलकुलेट करना भी सीखेंगे। सो फर्स्टली क्रेडिट रिकवरी रेट होता क्या है? सो रिकवरी रेट इज द एक्सटेंट टू विच प्रिंसिपल and accrued interest on default debt can be recovered, expressed as a percentage of face value. The recovery rate can also be defined as the value of a security when it emerges from default or bankruptcy. So, the recovery rate enables an estimate to meet the loss of that would arise in the event of default. So, which is calculated as 1 minus recovery rate. So, thus, if the recovery rate is 60%, the loss given default or LGD is 40%. So, on a 10 million debt instrument, the estimate loss arising from default is thus 4 million. So this is what basically a recovery rates are. So अब हम थोड़ा understand करते हैं कि हमारे roles में कैसा apply होता है. So the recovery rates can vary widely as they are affected by a number of factors such as instrument type, corporate issues, macroeconomic conditions, the type of instrument, and it is seniority with the corporate capital structures are amongst the main important determinants of the recovery rate. So these are basically the understandings of the recovery rate. Add on that the recovery rate is directly proportional to the instrument's seniority, which structures will usually have a higher recovery rate than one with the lower down in terms of the capital structures. So now we'll be estimating कि जो एक particular recovery rate होता है किसी भी डेरिवेटिव का, वो derive कैसे करते हैं, वो calculate कैसे करते हैं. So to calculate the recovery rate, one must first choose what type of group to focus and the set a time period such as weeks, months or years. वो हम कुछ भी कर सकते हैं depending upon our situations. So once a target group is identified and up to how money was extended to it over the given time period, and then add the total sum payback by that group. Next we'll be dividing the total payments amount and by the total amount of debt. So the result in the recovery rate. So for example, during 1 week you extended 15,000 in credit and received 2,000 in payments. So therefore 2,000 divided by 15,000, which is around 13.33%, is the recovery rate for that particular period. So this is all about recovery rates. So अगर अब हम डिस्कस करें कि how do we estimate probabilities, default probabilities to estimate our bond prices. Bond prices कैसे estimate करने होते हैं probabilities के थ्रू, हम ये डिस्कस करेंगे. So a CDS, which is basically credit default swap, जैसे मैंने काफी बार मेंशन कर दिया, it significantly reduces the risk of loss from a credit event for holders of bond issued by the reference entity, because for the CDS holder to lose, both the reference entity and the CDS seller must go bankrupt, considered unlikely, close to zero previously to the Great Recession of the 2008, which was also known as the global economic crisis. Hence, the combination of purchasing the bond of the reference entity and buying CDS protection for that bond credit are nearly risk-free synthetic assets. So the price of a CDS spread should be comparable to the bond yield of the reference entity minus the risk yield of the treasured security within the same maturity. So अगर हम broadly formula बनाएं CDS spread का, so which could be equal to n minus year bond yield minus n year of the risk minus the risk free yield. So if the CDS is significantly different in the sense excluding the trading and the liquidity loss, then nearly risk-free profits can be earned from arbitrage. If the CDS spread is greater, then the investor can earn a higher risk-free return by buying the bond or buying the CDS protection. Of course, the synthesis is not as risk-free as treasury, since there is a chance that both the bond and the CDS issuer will default. If the CDS spread is less, then the investor can profit by selling short the bond and selling the CDS protections. So that will be all how to estimate the default probabilities for the bond prices. Before jumping on to the default intensities, firstly I'd like to mention that a credit derivative has counterparty risk. So while a loan has default risk, a derivative has counterparty risk. Counterparty risk is a type or a subclass of credit risk, and it is the risk of default by the counterparty in many forms of derivative contracts. Let's contrast counterparty risk to loan default risk. If Bank A loans $10 million to customer C, Bank A charges a yield that includes compensation for default risk, but the exposure is easily to ascertain. It's roughly the invested $10 million. So a credit derivative, however, is an unfunded bilateral contract. Aside from the posted collateral, a derivative is a contractual promise that can be broken, so thus exposing the risk to both the parties. So consider an over the counter option sold written by Bank A to customer C. Market risk refers to the fluctuation value of the option. If the daily mark to market value. Its value will be the function largely by the underlying asset price, but also several other risks. If the option expires the money, bank A owes the intrinsic value to customer C. Counterparty risk is the credit risk that bank A will default all the obligation to the bank C. For example, bank A might go bankrupt. So now we'll understand the counterparty risk with an interest rate swap example. So let's assume two banks enter into a vanilla non-exotic interest rate swap. Bank A is the floating rate payer and bank B is the fixed rate player. So the swap has a notional value of 100 million and a life of 5 years. It is better to call the 100 million notional instead of the principal because the notional is not exchanged. It is merely reference to compute the payments. To keep the example simple, assume the LIBOR, the swap rate curve, is flat at 4%. In other words, when the bank begins the swap, the spot interest rates are 4% per annum for all the maturities. The bank will exchange payments at 6 months intervals for the swap tenor. Bank A, the floating payer, will pay 6 months LIBOR to exchange. Bank B will pay the fixed rate 4% per annum. Most importantly, the payments will be netted and the bank A cannot predict its future obligation, but bank B has no such uncertainty. At each interval, bank B knows it will owe 2 million, that is 100 million's notional 4% divided by 2, which is around 2 million. So let's consider counterparty exposure definition at 2 points in time at swap interception, which has t is equal to 0, and 6 months later, which is t equal to 0 to 5 years. Yeah, so before estimating the default probabilities which are derived from bond prices, firstly let's understand what exactly default risk means. So default risk is also called default probability. It is the probability that a borrower fails to make full and timely payments or principals and interest according to the terms of the debt security involved. Togetherly with the loss severity, default risk is one of the two components of credit risk. And now we'll be discussing about how to assess this particular default risk. So while it is often useful to consider the whole distribution of potential losses and their respective probabilities, it is generally convenient to calculate a simple indicator of risk that considers a single default probability and loss severity. The indicator is called expected loss and can be calculated as basically the default probability into the loss severity, which will give us the expected loss. So the assessment of default risk is a necessary step in the valuation of government and corporate bonds or credit derivatives, such as obviously which we'll be discussing further, the credit default swaps or the CDS. Since high quality bonds generally come with low default risk, the assessment of default risk for such instruments is generally more important than the estimate of the loss of the severity in case of the default. So therefore, default risk is key in determining the price and yield of the financial instruments. So a higher default risk generally corresponds with higher interest rates, or the issues of the bond holders to carry higher default risk will often find it difficult to access the capital markets, which may affect the financial potential of the company. So in these terms, we need to assess the following things. Firstly being the borrowing capacity. So while the definition of default risk is quite straightforward, its measurement is certainly not. So the level of default risk mainly depends on the borrower's capacity, that is the ability of the borrower to make its debt payments on time. So a borrower capacity is influenced by many factors, which are the first being the debtor's financial health. So other conditions being equal, companies with high levels of debt relative to the cash flows, cash reserves or assets will generally be less credit worthy than those with debt free or debt light balance sheets and have more of the liquid assets or high cash flows relative to debt. So a debtor's financial health is generally assessed through an in-depth look at the fundamentals, including the analysis of probabilities, cash flows, coverage ratios, liquidity, and leverage. The next being the economic cycle and the industry conditions. So a company's performance may be negatively affected by the external economic conditions, by issues that its customers or suppliers are facing. So in times of macroeconomic downturns or industry specific weaknesses, so even relatively healthy companies can face a deterioration in their credit worthiness and an increase in the default rates of their bonds. So conversely, during an economic boom or a very good period for a specific industry, even companies with a relatively poor economic health and a weak competitive advantage may experience an improvement in credit worthiness and a decrease in their default rates. So nextly being, there are certain agencies which are called as certain credit rating agencies, if I'm not wrong. So credit rating agencies such as Fitch Ratings, Moody's Investor Services, and Standard and Poor's plays an important role in the assessment of default risk. So the rating agencies use similar symbol-based ratings that summarize their assessments of a bond's risk of default. So the agencies apply the ratings to all types of bond, including corporate bonds, government-related bonds, municipal bonds, supernatural bonds, and asset-backed securities, and so on. So this is all about the default risk aspect. Also, if we talk about the bond ratings, so most corporate and government bonds will generally receive ratings from at least two of the agencies. The ratings are divided into two major categories: the investment grades and the non-investment grades are also called as high yield or junk, and subcategories that define the securities defaults are generally more specific. So bonds rated AAA are perceived to be the highest quality and carrying the lowest level of default risk. As we go down to the AAA ratings, the probability of default increases, although only below BNB or Baa3, the security loses its investment grade credit to become a non-investment grade security. So in addition to the symbol-based ratings, the agency usually provides an outlook on the ratings, which can be positive, stable, or even negative. So, or other indications on likely directions of the ratings, such as review or downgrade. Okay, so by now we have discussed all the possible combinations, how to calculate the credit ratings, how to estimate the default intensities, and what exactly the credit derivatives are. अब हम jump करेंगे कि instruments पे. So if we firstly discuss are the most major and the most common popular instrument, so that would be the unfunded credit derivative, and that is the credit default swaps. So the most popular form of unfunded credit derivatives is credit default swaps. In a credit default swap, the seller negotiates an upfront or continuous fees in order to compensate the buyer when a specific event, such as a default or failure to make a payment, occurs. The benefit to the buyer and the seller in CDS is that the buyer can remove risky entities from the balance sheets without having to sell them, while their sellers can gain their higher returns from investments by entering market which are otherwise difficult for them to get into. So CDS are basically of four types. So firstly being credit default swaps or single entities. In this form, the swap is only from the single entity. Nextly being the credit default swaps on a basket of entities. In this type of swap, there is a swap is on a bunch of entities combined. Nextly being the credit default index swaps. This includes a portfolio of single entity swaps. So basically a portfolio is created in this terms. Nextly be the first loss and the tragedy loss credit default swaps. So in this type, the buyer is compensated for any losses from the credit events, unlike that in the first credit default swap, which only compensates the loss in terms of the first credit defaults. So firstly, if we talk about the examples, if we have to mention some, so the most common example for a CDS is between a company, bank, and an insurance firm. So suppose Bank A buy a bond from an issued company called the XYZ company. In order to hedge the default of XYZ company, Bank A buys a credit default swap from insurance company. The bank keeps paying fixed periodic payments to the insurance company in exchange of the default protections. Let's just discuss some uses of the credit default swaps. So investors can buy credit default swaps for the following reasons. The firstly being speculation. An investor can buy an entity's credit default swap believing that it is too low or too high and attempt to make profits from it by entering into a trade. Also, an investor can buy credit default swap protection to speculate that the company is likely to default, since an increase in CDS spread reflects a decline in the credit worthiness and vice versa. So a CDS buyer might also sell his protection if he thinks that the seller's credit worthiness might improve. So the seller is viewed as being long to the CDS, and the credit by the investor who bought the protection is perceived as short on the CDS and to its credit. So most investors argue that a CDS helps in determining the credit worthiness of an entity. So the nextly being the hedging. So hedging is an investment aimed at reducing the risk of the adverse price movements. So banks may hedge against the risk that a loanee may default by entering into a CDS contract and the buyer or protection. So if the borrower defaults, the proceeds from the contract balance off with the default debt. So in absence of the CDS, a bank may sell that loan to another bank or a financial institution. However, the practice can damage the bank's borrower relationship since it shows the bank's lack of trust in their borrower. So buying a credit default swap allows the bank to manage the risk of default while keeping the loan as part of their portfolio. So the nextly being the arbitrage. So arbitrage is the practice of buying a security from one market and simultaneously selling it in another market at a relatively higher price for therefore the profits. So therefore benefiting from the temporary difference in the stock prices. It relies on the fact that a firm's stock price and the credit default spread should portray a negative correlation. If a company's outlook improves, then the share price should increase and the CDS spread should tighten. However, if the company's outlook fails to improve, the CDS spread should widen and the stock price should decline. For example, when a company experiences an adverse event and its shares price drops, an investor would expect an increase in the CDS spread relative to the share price drop. Arbitrage could occur when the investor exploits the slowness of the market to make a profit. So nextly, if we discuss what are the risks associated with the credit default swaps. So one of the risks of a credit default swap is that a buyer may default on the contract, thereby denying the seller the expected revenue. So the seller transfers the CDS to another party as a form of protection against risk, but it may lead to a default where the original buyer drops out of the agreement. The seller may be forced to sell a new CDS to a third party to recoup the reinitial investment. So however, the new CDS may sell at a lower price than the original CDS, leading to a loss. The seller of a credit default swap also faces the jump risk. The seller may be collecting monthly premiums from the new buyer with the hope that the original buyer will pay as agreed. However, a default on the part of the buyer creates an immediate obligation on the seller to pay the millions or billions owed to the protected buyers. Yeah, so basically these all were the risks that were associated with the risk involving the credit default swaps. So if we take a particular case study which involved the credit default swaps, would be the 2018 global financial crisis. So before the crisis of 2008, there was more money invested in credit default swaps than in other pools. The value of credit default swaps stood at around 45 trillion compared to 22 trillions invested in the stock market, 7.1 trillion in mortgages and 4.4 trillion in the US treasuries. In mid 2010, the value of outstanding CDS was around $26.3 trillion. So many investment banks were involved, but the biggest casualty was the Lehman Brothers Investment Bank, which owed 600 billion in debt, out of which 400 billion was covered by CDS. The bank's insurer, American Insurance Group, lacked sufficient funds to clear the debt, and the Federal Reserve of the United States needed to intervene to bail it out. So companies that traded in swaps were battered during the financial crisis. Since the market was unregulated, banks used swaps to insure complex financial products. Investors were no longer interested in buying swaps, and the banks began holding more capital and becoming risk averse in granting loans. So the Dodd-Frank Wall Street report account of 2019 was introduced to regulate the credit default swaps market. It phased out the riskier swaps and prohibited banks from using customer deposits to invest in swaps and other derivatives. The act also required the setting up of a clearinghouse to trade and the price swaps. Though this was basically the study which involved the credit default swaps, and it was a part of the 2018 global financial crisis. Yeah, so if we have to sum up the entire video about the credit derivatives, I would like to conclude and say that with the set of pros and cons involved in credit derivatives, investors should measure and manage counterparty risk, correlation and liquidity. Building a strong financial shock absorber is a key element for ensuring financial stability. So that will be all from my side, and I'm very thankful to sir for helping me making this video.